All right, welcome back to Boisterous Cock Farmstead. So today I am going to produce, hopefully, the much awaited guinea hog review, much like I did with my Icelandic chickens. If you haven't seen that video, please check out the description. I'll leave a link in there. So the first thing I will say about this video is I am giving my perspective on this breed, and I'll give you the information that I go by and why I like this breed. But I will say that this breed is not for everyone, and I think some of the things that I have seen about this breed, not only before I bought the breed but after I bought into this breed, is people not understanding what this breed actually is and expecting it to perform in a way that it is not designed to perform. So I'll go over my top few points, pros and cons, because let's face it, there's positives and negatives with everything, but it's whether the positive and negatives weigh in your favor with whatever situation that you have as to whether it's a good fit for you or not a good fit. So, living in the desert, it is an extreme situation to begin with. And so not every animal would even fit to this environment anyway. But this breed has actually done really well for me since moving here 4 years ago. And it's pretty much, before we even had this property, I had bought a bred gilt, and 6 months later, the breeder that I actually bought the gilt from approached me saying that she had a situation where she was needing to get rid of her herd, and so I ended up buying the parent stock of that bred gilt. And so I ended up, she was pregnant at the time, I ended up getting more pigs than I originally had planned for this property. And I've had to make some adjustments because of that. And so even considering that, that actually gave me a more stressed situation to see how well certain things kind of fell in my favor or didn't fall in my favor. And so that's all part of my decision as well. But even though I am out with mostly guinea hog, sows, and gilts, this is actually Tootsie. So Tootsie is my Duroc cross that she was the runt of her litter. She's the sister of Pumpkin, and Pumpkin's almost twice her size. And she is the mother of the hybrid pigs that I've been raising out for meat. And I kept a boar and I kept a gilt. Hi, Tootsie. See, she's very sweet, docile. Durocs are pretty good temperament. Guinea hogs are really good temperament as well, but we'll get to that here shortly. On my list of pros, we'll start with the pros because we want to start on a good foot. And again, I will say this is a positive breed. If I were going to get back into pigs again, starting from scratch with what I know, I would still look for guinea hog as part of my herd. However, one of the reasons why I got those Duroc crosses is to try to finesse the negatives of the guinea hog and try to turn them into a positive. And I won't know that until I butcher my first hybrid to see if that was a success or not. So that has kind of been almost 3 years in the making, 2.5 years in the making, before I actually get that information. So if you guys don't want to have to go through what I did and breed them out yourself and do your own experiments, then definitely want to keep posted for that video when it comes out, and I'll give you an overview of the hybrid cross between the Guinea Hog and my Duroc cross as well. But let's talk a little bit about the Guinea Hogs. Okay, so in this shot in the foreground here, that's actually Licorice. She is my Duroc hybrid, Duroc Guinea Hog hybrid, which I call Guinea-Rocs. And so I don't have a great shot. Let's see if I can get a better shot of one of the Guinea Hog girls. Okay, so straight in the back here, this is one of my Guinea Hog girls. She is of registered line, though she is not registered. I can register her at any point in time if I needed to, for whatever reason. But for the most part, I wanted to get registered stock in the event that I wanted to offer registered stock. However, in my area, I don't really get a whole lot of inquiries about registered stock. So I haven't really tried to keep up the paperwork, though I have kept all the dates and everything like that. And you can register an animal any point in time, provided that you have all the information on the parentage and the birth date and everything like that. So she was born 3/27 of 18, and so is the one behind Licorice here. And they actually both are pretty good examples of Guinea Hogs, I would say. They kind of exhibit all the attributes that I like about this breed. And though I'm going to go through a few points here and there, what I'd like to do is I'd like to start out by mentioning guineahogs.org website. That is the official American Guinea Hog Association website to reference. They have all kinds of information. If you have information about breed standards or anything like that, or if you're looking for Guinea Hogs, that's a good reference point to start with. And I am registered as a lifetime breeder for the American Guinea Hog on that website. That is the first place that I would recommend anybody to visit and familiarize yourself with the breed. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them, or feel free to ask me as well, and be happy to either point you in a direction or answer it to the best of my ability. So the number one pro that I have for the American Guinea Hog is kind of a jumbled answer, which I will kind of filter through the term easy keeper. So with calling it an easy keeper, that addresses the fact that they can live in a pretty broad range of environment. They can handle freezing temperatures fairly well, and they can handle extreme temperatures, which I am sitting in one of the most extreme that they will encounter. And provided that they are actually healthy animals, which the ones that I have lost, they were overweight females. And if you haven't seen that video, last summer I did lose an animal that wandered off my property. We are a free-ranging state, so I was using my neighbor's field, and one of my pigs wandered off past there, and she was getting into a pile of corn that I didn't know about a mile away. And I kind of found out some information after the fact, but I was trying to drive her back over while having my son in the car seat in a vehicle and not wanting to leave him abandoned. I tried my best to get her back over here, and she ended up overheating and dying not too far from my house. But she was overweight, partly because she was getting into that corn. And so that is something you have to be very careful with. This breed is that if you overfeed them, they will just get fat. They don't put on weight the same as a leaner pig like my Durocs are. And there are positives and negatives even within that. So they can handle extreme temperatures, high and low, fairly well, provided that you give them the infrastructure to adapt to those things. For me here, it's always having a permanent wallow. So I've got 4 separate groups of pigs. I keep 4 separate wallows if I have them segregated out like that. If there's any point in time where I combine some of those, I will let one of those wallows dry up and just have as few wallows as I need to meet the needs of whatever grouping I have. So along with the extreme along with the ability to adapt to various environments, they also can adapt to many different forages. So here in the desert Southwest, we actually get seasonal rains, and usually that's kind of in the January, February range, and then also somewhere between the June and August type range. We may get here sprinkling here and there, and that will pop up some native annual forbs, which would be primarily there's something called London Rocket, which is kind of in the arugula family, and then there's also tumbleweed, which is Russian thistle is what is the primary tumbleweed. And then we also get a type of amaranth as well in certain circumstances. The last year and a half has been very dry here, so we haven't had much of anything. I've had to really supplement a lot of their feed because of that. So if you were in, say, North Carolina, West Virginia, Virginia type area or something like that, and you got regular rain and you had nice green grass all the time, these would be extremely easy pigs to keep for that reason. But even for me, because they can adapt to many different forages, even these mesquite trees, which give them a seed pod in the fall, it actually gives them green growth right now as well. They come and browse along these trees because they're pretty low to the ground, and that helps to supplement. Now I do have to feed them hay, I do feed them grain, so that they have their bases covered. I don't want them super fat, I don't want them super thin, so whatever I need to do to kind of make up the difference between what they're able to get out in the pasture and foraging for their own and have to give them, I'm more than happy to do that. So they can actually thrive on many different types of forages, but also they thrive probably better than most species on very low grade forage. So things that I wouldn't even think were even food to them, they're out there munching it up, and little sticks and twigs and things like that. They're eating that and keeping their weight on. Whereas comparatively, my Duroc crosses, they can't really thrive on that kind of stuff. They don't even really thrive all that well on hay. I have to grain them pretty heavy by comparison to keep their weight up to what I would say is a healthy weight. And then so overall, they're just pretty low maintenance. You provide them water, shelter, and food, and they will pretty much monitor themselves, maintain themselves. So that's my number 1 pro for the American Guinea Hog. So the number 2 positive for me is the flavor of the meat. So before I actually bought into this breed, I actually was able to get a sample of the meat from the breeder. Here's Tootsie again, my Duroc cross. I was able to get a sample of the meat from the breeder and taste what the flavor profile was, and I was sold as soon as I got a taste of that. And that was even considering the fact that it was way fattier than I would prefer. But that's something that I can adjust with the way that I grow my animals out, and felt pretty confident with being able to do that. And so for me, it is a rich, nutty flavor that's almost like a mix between what the pork that you would find in a grocery store and beef. So ribeyes, my favorite cut of beef as far as eating is concerned, and the pork chops on this guinea hog is more like a ribeye in my mind. It's got a little bit more marbling and everything, than the very lean type of pork that you'll find in the grocery store. So that suits my taste buds very well. Oh, I got a pig trying to check out my camera here. That fits my taste buds very well. Minimal cook whenever I season my pork for the guinea hog. It's pretty much salt and pepper, and I might cook it in some butter. But outside of that, not much. Maybe a little bit of ground sage if I'm feeling feisty. But for the most part, I let the flavor of the meat shine through. I don't want to overpower it with anything else. And it does a really good job of that. So there are some downsides, and I will address that later with the guinea hog meat in and of itself. But I don't want to focus on that right now. So right now is the flavor of the meat is spectacular. It's the best pork I've ever had, hands down. Now, I haven't had all kinds of pork, but compared to a grocery store pork, it's night and day. But for the most part, it's hands down the best pork I've ever had, and works great whether it's a cut of meat like a pork chop, or if you're using it for ground sausage and substituting in a lot of your beef recipes like spaghetti. We have ground pork spaghetti a lot, and we've even made ground pork burgers, and it's a little bit different, but it's really juicy and it's very flavorful. That one, I would say you probably want to season it a little bit more if you want it to taste more like a hamburger type thing. So the third positive that I will say is the size of the carcass is smaller, so that to get the whole pig in a freezer, it fits much better than a more traditional or conventional breed of meat pig. When I have gotten my pigs to the size that I feel is optimal, to where I'm not overfeeding them and they're not underperforming on the growth chart, what I've ended up getting is 125 pounds hanging weight, and that may seem very small to people, even if you grow out American Guinea Hogs. But remember, this is with very little forage supplementation over the last couple years because of the drought. And if I had, say, nut trees and things like that they could forage more from, they probably would get bigger faster. So, and kind of a bonus positive pro here is probably one that, as far as I could have probably lumped it in with the easy keeper aspect, but I kind of kept it separate, and that is temperament. So these guys are super docile, super calm. The only one that I've ever had any attitude from is the boar that I bought as the breeding parent, and that was one that he was kept very differently than my style of management prior to coming here, and I think he had developed a dominance personality over there, and when he came here and I expected him to kind of fall in line under my management, we did kind of butt heads a little bit, and so we respect each other, but I don't trust him to the level that I would trust any of my other guinea hogs that I have bred. And even my hybrid boar, he's very sweet, he's very docile, and so a lot of that has to do with how much exposure and time that you actually spend with the animals as they're growing up, and kind of once they develop a challenging mentality, you can decide whether it's something you want to have on your farm. I don't mind him being, top boar in his mind or whatever, but that comes with the territory of I have to protect myself if I go in there. I can't turn my back on him, and that's just a general rule with pretty much any pig. You should respect the size and the mass of the animal, and the fact that they at any point in time they can crunch down on your arm and break your arm with their jaw bite. Is it likely? Depending on the animal, maybe it isn't, but the possibility is always there, and I think it's smart to keep that in the forefront of your mind anytime you're dealing with these animals, because at any point in time they could just revert to their natural state. And if something really spooks them or irritates them or whatever, agitates them, they can react in any way that is their nature, and it's smart to be prepared for that. I'm in here with my younger ones to kind of give you an idea of, I showed you that the hybrid Guinea Hog father side, Duroc cross on the mother side, that was over there was about the same size as a 3-year-old Guinea Hog that would be ready for butcher as far as that's concerned. So she's probably about 175, 80 pounds, something like that. This is a 2-year-old that was not on a lot of really good forage, and so she's been growing slower. And I don't have enough demand for raising up that many animals for butcher anyway. So I have kept them on a slower growth schedule. Although, as I'm kind of rotating everybody around, if I see anybody that's lagging, I put them into a group. So these guys are actually getting fed grain and hay right now, and that leads me to a couple points that I would say are on the con side or the negative side. And the number one is, even at a pig size that I would say is a butcher size, which is 125 pounds hanging, the muscle groups on that pig are going to be smaller. So whereas you might have a pork chop that is, 5 or 6 inches across from the grocery store, you may have a 3 or 4 inch across pork chop loin, or pork loin from American Guinea Hogs to the size that I raise them. Now, I raise them to this size for a couple reasons. One is it's minimal input for me. 2 is it's a lower price point for a lot of customers. And 3, it gets a full animal into a freezer space. Instead of having to do like a half a hog, you can do a whole hog. And that appeals to some customers. It may not appeal to all customers. So take I guess a census of whatever your customers' needs are and go from there. But the cuts are definitely smaller. The bacon is thinner and it doesn't have as much muscle in it. Overall, they're not as muscly. They are a lard breed. So if you overfeed them, they will put the weight on as fat. They won't put it on as muscle. Whereas compared to my other hybrid pigs, which I will show a little bit of information on them towards the end there. I'll go into the market pig setup and show you guys what those guys look like comparatively. But these guys they're gonna have a larger, rounder, softer belly, which is gonna be smaller bacon, things like that, or smaller belly, pork belly, which when it's cured would be bacon. Kind of 1B or number 2 is they are a longer growing out period than more conventional pigs. So one of the downsides of the American Guinea Hog that is almost a positive, but for the most part it is what I would say a con, is that they take longer to grow out to full maturity. But even if you try to push an American Guinea Hog to grow faster, it's a real fine line before they get really fat. Now, what I have seen with the way that they were grown out before I bought them and how I've grown them out, you can try the approach of overfeeding and letting them get fat and then just kind of weaning them or the rich diet, so that their body, their skeletal structure and everything will grow out. Their muscle will grow out because they have a load of fat that they're carrying around. But then when you're getting close to butchering time, you want to trim them back some on their diet so that there's not as much fat that you're paying for. Now, if you want to render down lard to make, lard for cooking, or if you want to make soaps or whatever, then maybe you don't mind all the fat, but it's going to marble into the meat as well. which the one group that's the most notable for that is the belly itself. So you are probably going to end up with more fat than muscle in your belly cuts if you grow them out on a very heavy feed or a heavy grain ration, especially grain. But you can make adjustments, and they'll trim down relatively easy. They trim down much faster than they grow out. So that's the really probably the worst downside in my mind is just the length that it takes to get them to market, to recoup your investment. However, because of their ability to handle the low forage and things like that, and they have a very low maintenance for diet, they actually maintain very, very well on pretty easy rations. So whereas my Duroc crosses, I have to make sure that I continue to grain them, whether they're my breeding stock or whether they're my market stock, accordingly. Okay, and the number 3 con that I will say is kind of along that same line, is they have a lower feed to mass conversion, and especially a lower feed to muscle conversion than a conventional pig would have. If you overfeed, say my Duroc crosses, or if you just excessively feed them, they'll just grow out faster, but they'll grow out pretty true to their conformation. And an American Guinea Hog will just kind of build up fat around the skeletal and muscular development that they have. And it'll also have some marbling inside there as well, but the excess goes to energy storage, which is lard or fat in those instances. So those are my top pros and cons. As I said, for me personally, I really love the breed. I would pick them up again if I were ever to move for whatever reason or had to start over from scratch. I enjoy them. I've compared them to, say, the Kuni, and I prefer the flavor of the AGH to the Kuni. I prefer the personality and the foraging, especially of the American Guinea Hog, to the Kuni. And then I've had someone who was a breeder of Kunis that bought a gilt, American Guinea Hog gilt for me, and they preferred the American Guinea Hog for meat purposes, but the resale, they were selling pets of Kuni, and the resale was better on the Kuni side than the American Guinea Hog was. So they were kind of torn between the two, but I think they ended up keeping both of them to have the best of both worlds. So those are my main points, and we'll do a quick little look on my hybrids here and try to get a little bit of a comparison with the physique. This is my hybrid cross gilt. This is the one that's going to be going to the butcher first. They're longer legged, they're longer torsoed, and you can see her belly is nice and tight up against her. Her muscle development is a lot better than the Guinea Hogs are, and she is a year old right now, and like I said, she's probably close to 200 pounds or so. So that is an estimate based on the measurements that I took from the barrow that's in here, but he's playing hard to get. So there's the boar in the barrow there. The boar's on the left hand side as we're looking, and you can see they're litter mates. And the boar was actually larger when they were piglets, but because of the feed that I've been giving both of these guys here, they've grown out at a faster pace than that boar did. So as you can see, they're more of the torpedo style, long rectangular, versus the American Guinea Hog, which is more of a rounded kind of chub. So these guys hopefully are going to give me that better bacon cut and more muscular, larger muscle groups, but still hopefully have some good marbling to them. And obviously we want to keep that flavor as well. So Durocs in general are supposed to be pretty good for muscular development and everything. That's why I chose them. They are 1/4 blue butt, which is a Hampshire, Yorkshire hybrid themselves. But so far I'm actually very happy with how these guys have performed. Any changes that might have been made would be, one, I don't free choice them. So if I wanted them to grow faster, I may just dump out food for them instead of rationing it. But I wanted to see really how much it would take for them to get up to a certain point, and also compared to how much I feed everybody else. And if you haven't seen the video of the fermented feed that I do, I'll try to remember to leave a link in the description, but you can also find that in our video library as well. And so that's going to wrap it up for the American Guinea Hog, and a slight touch on the American Guinea Hog crosses that I'm doing. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. Please subscribe to our channel, share this video, comment on this video, click the bell notification so that you're notified when new and upcoming content is released. And as I said before, I've got a hybrid that's going to the butcher here in a couple weeks, and I'll do a kind of a recap of what that animal weighed and how much meat we got from them, and what the cuts look like, and compare those to American Guinea Hog cuts as well. So, as always, thanks for joining us, and God bless.